What's going on YouTube? It is FlopFish here, and welcome to my 2013 Stanley Cup bracket. This is on the NHL.com bracket challenge. I figured I'd do one of these just to, have some fun, and so already went through and made my picks, just going to give you kind of my overall pick view. So we got Minnesota upsetting the Blackhawks in 7, Detroit upsetting Anaheim in 5, Vancouver in 5 over San Jose, St. Louis in 7 over LA, Pittsburgh over the Islanders in 5, and Ottawa over Montreal in 7, Washington over the Rangers in 5, and Toronto over Boston in 6. Now, these are a bit of a riskier pick, but once again, I'm doing them on this site to be a little bit of a more calculated risk and a gut feeling, as opposed to one that's just let's play it safe, because ultimately it's free to play and the prizes are fairly decent. So figured it'd probably be worth going for a bit of a riskier pick here, and who knows, maybe I could win the trip to the Winter Classic here. So these are my round one picks, and the reason why I chose, I'll go over the upsets for the main part. The reason why I chose Ottawa over Montreal is because Craig Anderson's a brick wall and he's just going to outduel Carey Price, and I think Montreal will have a hard time finding the net, and it's going to be a fairly low scoring series, but ultimately Ottawa's going to piggyback off Anderson, and they're going to get to 7 games and win it this time this year. Yeah, the most intriguing matchup for me in the entire first round is going to be the Washington and Rangers series, and the winner of this series is going to go to the Cup Finals out of the East. It's one of those series, but it's only going to be 5 games for whoever gets it. It's going to be a quick series, and it's whoever's going to be able to get their momentum fast enough. And I think Washington has that with Green, Backstrom, and Ovechkin just on fire right now. Hope he'll be solid enough in net for them, and there's no real worries about that. Now, I chose Toronto over Boston because I just think Kessel's going to shake his curse. They're going to be able to somehow keep up their fluky season play, and what I mean by fluky is that they're a negative puck possession team, but they somehow made it in, and it's kind of shocking to see that, because you don't really see them make the playoffs. I think they're like bottom 5 in the league, but they're doing a very good, especially in shot differential, they're doing a very good job of keeping players to the outside for shots, and they're just getting very good chances and shooting when they get good chances, and they're finding the net. So if that keeps up, they're going to be able to move on around, and I think it'll keep up for 1 round, probably not 2, but I think the Leafs are going to move on, and the Habs fans are going to hear it from the Leafs for a long time. St. Louis is going to beat LA in probably the most ice pack needed series. I think just it's a battle between Pietrangelo and Doughty and Backes and Brown, in my opinion, for the most part. And I think St. Louis overall has a better supporting cast, and I think they're just going to be able to be better than LA and beat them in 7. Vancouver and San Jose, this is going to be an interesting series. I think it's going to go 5 games either way, but I'm going to go with the Canucks because they're my hometown team, and if I went with the Sharks, I'd be going against them. Ultimately, Sharks can win this series in 5 games as well. It's going to be a quick series, but it's going to be a tight series too. At the same time, there's not going to be huge blowout games. They're going to be close, but ultimately I think the Canucks have what it takes to cool off the Sharks, who rely on momentum heavily. And Anaheim and Detroit, this one a lot of people are taking Detroit in just because of experience and stuff, and I kind of am going to go with that. Although I do think the Ducks could easily win this in 5 games as well. I just think Detroit's going to get amazing performances out of Datsuk and Zetterberg, and they're going to be able to move on no problem. Now, Chicago, Minnesota, this is an upset to me. Minnesota, to me, should have been a better team than where they finished. They shouldn't have, backdoored into the playoffs, but they did, and ultimately it kind of simulates their collapse from last season. And although I think that they could falter fairly easily, I think they'll be able to do very well. Backstrom's not gonna steal them in the series by any means, but he's gonna be a very, very good goaltender. Backstrom's probably the most consistent goaltender in the NHL, and he's not gonna allow huge blowout games, but at the same time, he's gonna be able to beat the Blackhawks, and I think Minnesota's gonna be able to pull off the victory over Chicago, and I think Chicago's magical run will be done. And so let's go into round 2 here. No real explanations needed from here on in, other than Anderson's going to be a brick wall and Pittsburgh's going to falter. I think Fleury's going to falter fairly. He's going to fall flat on his face in the second round. So I'm just going to take Ottawa there. Like I said, these are a bit riskier because I want them to be different from everyone else's bracket, And yeah, when you're playing for prizes, you make sure you want to, like, especially when they're free to play, you make sure you want to have some risks in there. It's your time to take them, and it's your time to go with your gut feeling as opposed to kind of your mental feelings. Now we got Washington and Toronto, and this will be the only sweep in my bracket if I could choose the games played. I'd put 4 games on Washington. The reason why I'm choosing Washington here is just, if they, like I said, the winner of this round 1 between the Rangers and Capitals is going to the Cup Finals, and ultimately I think their firepower is going to be way too much for for Toronto to handle, and I just think they're going to be able to find a hole in Reimer. And yeah, now we got 2 division battles for the last time in the in the West, and Vancouver, Minnesota. This one's going to be an intriguing series. It's going to go 6 games, and it's going to go to the Canucks. I think they're going to be able to bump their curse against the Wild in the second round, and I think the depth of the Canucks is going to be something to reckon with in the playoffs, because once again, when you're benching Ballard and Barker as your fourth defensive pairing, you've got some fairly solid defense there. And a lot of people don't like Barker, but he's not the best, but I mean, he's still fairly solid to throw in there, and especially with the way Corrado's been playing, I think Vancouver is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Once they get Tanev back, when they get Tanev back, they have 9 legitimate NHL defensemen on their roster, and that's kind of a lot. Their forward depth, they've got the center depth now. They've got great lines. This is probably the deepest team they've had in a long, long time, and people have been writing them off all year. I'll make a video about this later on, but they're going to be able to pull off a pretty good run, in my opinion, in these playoffs if they get past the first round. And then in round 2, St. Louis versus Detroit. This is going to be a fairly easy series for St. Louis. It's going to go 6 games. They're going to lose 2 games in overtime, and then they're going to win 4 fairly easily. I think St. Louis is, as much as 6 game isn't an easy series, I think St. Louis is going to look like the clear-cut winner of the series, just because they're going to dominate the play. I think they'll be able to survive their series against LA and be able to heal enough, and so that's why I'm going with St. Louis there over Detroit, setting up a Vancouver-St. Louis conference finals and an Ottawa-Washington conference finals. And I'm going with Vancouver and Washington, as always. Those of you who don't know me, this has been like my bracket for like 3 years in a row, having a Washington-Vancouver final, just because I'd like to see these 2 teams face off against each other. So I'm taking Vancouver. I just think they'll be able to beat the Blues, and I think eventually the Blues are going to have some injuries from both their series against Cronwall and Brown. Those are probably 2 of the hardest hitters in the league, and I don't think they'll be able to survive without some key injuries to players, but who knows. Ultimately, I think they're going to be able to pull it off. Alright guys, I'm back. Sorry, phone rang. And so yeah, where was I? I was at Vancouver and St. Louis. Vancouver's going to be able to beat up on St. Louis here. St. Louis is going to have some injuries, and they're just not going to be able to compete. And then we have the Senators and the Capitals, and once again, I think Anderson, while he'll be solid, I think Washington's got too of a high-octane offense to move on and win this series. And then we're going to the Stanley Cup Finals, which, as always, got the Canucks and the Capitals. Been my finals for a few years, so why not stick with it, and hopefully it happens. But ultimately, the 2-3 seeds going against each other, I think it's going to go 5 games, and I think Vancouver is going to be able to overpower the Capitals in this series. I honestly really like Vancouver's chances this year. They're coming in with not a ton of expectations around them, and I think this is the kind of year for them to take advantage of that and move on and win the Stanley Cup. And after all, it's only a 48 game season, so people are going to say it doesn't count when we win a cup, but who knows. And goals scored in the final, I'm going to go with 23. I'm going to go with Alex Edler there. Actually, you know what? We're going to go with Daniel Sedin, because yeah, it's Daniel Sedin. Anyways, guys, so that's my kind of bracket here. Let's just look at it again. So we got Minnesota over Chicago, Detroit over Anaheim, Vancouver over San Jose, St. Louis over LA. Then in round 2 we have Vancouver over Minnesota, St. Louis over Detroit, and then in the conference finals we have Vancouver over St. Louis, putting them in the Cup Finals. And then we have Pittsburgh over the Islanders, Ottawa over the Canadiens, Washington over the Rangers, and Toronto over the Bruins. And then we're gonna have the not the Canadiens, the Senators over the Penguins, then the Capitals over the Leafs, and then we're going to have the Capitals over the Senators, then we're going to have the Vancouver Canucks, Washington Capitals final, and Canucks are going to be able to cap off a victory here and win the Stanley Cup in 2013. So that's my predictions. Obviously, a little bit of bias there towards the Canucks, but, whatever. They're kind of fun to do, and although they might not be 100% right, who knows? Stranger things have happened, and after all, it is the playoffs. So anyways, guys, as always, take it easy, and peace out.